Why is nobody selling? Prices right now in Ottawa and in fact in Ontario, in Canada, and even throughout the United States, prices are escalating like crazy, and the number one reason is the basic economics of supply and demand. Not enough people are selling when the number of people buying continues to increase. Why are not enough people selling? Why is nobody selling? Let's take a look at that today. Okay, before we take a look at the possible reasons that not enough people are selling, let's just do a quick look at the data just to show you once and for all that we are barking up the right tree here in suggesting that not enough people are selling, that it really is supply and demand. Here are the numbers to the end of March, year to date, from 2015 to 2021, the number of properties selling in Ottawa versus the number of new listings coming on the market. Take a look at this. 2015, number of sales, number of new listings. 2016 to the end of March, year to date, number of sales, number of new listings. 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2021. So that's the raw data in terms of the number of people trying to sell their home, new listings, versus the number of sales that actually happen. The number of new listings is going down. What is the result? The result is that the number of homes on the market at any one time, what we call inventory, you go into a store, they have their inventory on the shelves. Well, in real estate, we have inventory out there on the streets. If fewer listings are coming on the market and the number of sales are going up, inventory is going to go down, correct? Here are the inventory numbers from 2015, 16, 17, 18, 2019, 2020, and 2021. You can see the problem. The number of homes on the market at the end of March in 2015 was 7,700, and now in 2021, it's 1,188 properties on the market. That is a ridiculously small number of properties on the market for a city of 1 million people. The problem is clearly illustrated by these numbers. The one saving grace that you can see, do you see it? Do you see in the numbers that I showed you the one number that is the first sign of things potentially turning around? 2021 to the end of March, the number of new listings coming on the market has gone up over 2020. So for 6 years in a row, the number was going down. It is actually going up this year. However, it's not enough yet to satisfy pent-up demand. So the number of sales increased even more because there are quite a few people who've been trying to buy who haven't been able to buy because there aren't enough homes. Now that we're getting a little bit of a surge of homes coming on the market, they're getting snapped up. So inventory has still gone down. If this trend continues, if new listings coming on the market continues to increase over the course of this year, then we might start to see some relief. That inventory will start to build up. All right, let's get into the reasons why not enough people are selling. All right, first reason not enough people are selling. Who sells their house? Well, you have people who have previously bought their first house. Maybe it was a small house, a townhouse, condo townhouse, maybe even a condo apartment. And it's a young person, individual or couple. Maybe they're starting to have a family, maybe they're not, but they just would like to move up the chain. They'd like more space for whatever reason. People selling that first home, moving into the next home, those are people who sell. People at the other end of the spectrum who have perhaps owned 2 or 3 homes in their lives, and now they are maybe empty nesters or just getting older, whether or not they had kids in the house, and they just don't want as much house to look after, so they look for something smaller. Those people sell their property. So these are the main reasons why people sell property. They're either moving up to the next property or moving down from a big property they don't need anymore. So let's look at that last category. People who would normally be downsizing now. Not as many of them are doing so, or at least not doing so as early in their home ownership and age cycle as they normally would. Why could that be? People who want to move into something smaller, they want to move into something really nice, usually a bungalow or a condo, but they want it to be not too small and super nice in a great location with maybe some privacy or great views. Those kinds of properties are in really limited supply. One, they just don't build enough of them. There's not enough variety in the housing stock in bungalows and condos that are large enough and located well enough, and lastly, priced well enough. So what happens is people who want to downsize end up having to up price, and they don't really want to up price when they downsize. Those forces would explain why that demographic, though the people who live in their large family home, might not be selling. What about the people in their first home who are not selling to move up to their second home? A few reasons this is happening. One is that the homes that people are buying for their first home nowadays, the typical home is a freehold townhouse, 1,800 to 2,000 square feet in the suburbs, open concept design, tons of space, probably not with a very big yard. 40 years ago, a first home, 50 years ago, a first home was, a 900 to 1,100 square foot bungalow, probably on a huge lot, but a tiny little house that people would want to move up from at some point. Well, people buying a 2,000 square foot, Minto townhouse in the suburbs right now, they can have a couple of kids in there. People are not having huge families like they did 75 years ago. People can live in that townhouse pretty comfortably for a long time, arguably forever, other than it's attached. They may want a detached house at some point. But for a lot of people, that first home is pretty livable compared to what first homes used to be. And therefore, the motivation to move to the next home is not always as great. Yes, many of them do want to move up, but can they afford to move up to that big detached home? And is that affordability enough to outweigh the comfort level that they have in their current home? Another reason that the primarily first group, people who buy their first home, may not be selling that home even when they do move into their second home. A bunch of factors have come together to make people value real estate as an investment more than they perhaps did in the past. There's more information out there. People can just search online and learn about investing in real estate. They could speak to real estate agents and investors who understand it well, who can coach them in investing. There are more people now who will think about holding on to their first property as an investment, perhaps rather than dumping their money into mutual funds. The stock market, mutual funds, there have been a couple of real big hiccups, 2008 being the prime example. A lot of people lost their confidence, or at least their excitement, about investing in mutual funds and stocks and bonds, and people start to see the value of investing in real estate. So a certain percentage of people who move up from their first property to their next property hold on to that first property and rent it out as an investment. So they are providing housing, but they're not adding to the pool of inventory of for sale properties. I have one more theory that might explain why people in their first or second home are not moving up to the next home. And that is the unintended consequences of government intervention. Now, the interesting thing is a lot of people in society are calling for the government to fix the house price problem. Well, first off, we really don't want government directly doing anything to house prices. The formula driving the entire economy, and the real estate economy and the rest of the economy, is so complex. I don't think people, even the brightest economists studying all of the data, studying all the trends, I don't think they can predict what the results will be when they take some of the steps that they take to try to cool the market off. I think measures like the stress test have unintended consequences. The idea of putting in a stress test was to help ensure that people don't get into mortgages that they won't be able to afford when interest rates go up. This was also supposed to try to keep prices under control. If people have to qualify at 5%, they don't qualify for as high a purchase price, and that's going to prevent them from offering a higher price or buying a higher price because they don't qualify for it. I think that this has had unintended consequences. The idea was to, cool prices down so that housing becomes more affordable. But what has happened is people who purchased their first home, a freehold townhouse, let's say, 4 or 5 years ago, purchased it before the stress test. They bought as much home as they could afford. And now, and they've perhaps been starting to think about buying that next home. So let's say they bought a freehold townhouse for $350,000. they're saving up, they want to buy a detached house for $600,000. Well, all of a sudden the stress test comes in. Well, now, while they were getting close to being able to qualify for that $600,000 house, now they only qualify for a $475,000 house. Well, guess what? There's nothing for them to move up to that's $475,000, so they stay put, especially because of the other things we talked about. The freehold townhouse isn't that bad a place to live. They'd love to move up, they can't afford it anymore, which means their freehold townhouse does not go on the market, which means there's less supply of first-time homebuyer homes on the market, which means there's way more demand than supply, which means multiple offers and people start pushing prices up. So the very measure that was supposed to cool pricing and cool the market heats it right up. This is a theory that I came up with on my own. It doesn't necessarily have any legs, but to me it makes some sense. It's one of these things that is too complex to prove. You'd have to do qualitative market research and start talking to people who are in their first home, finding out if the reason they're not moving up is in fact that, yeah, we would have been able to afford to, but now we can't because of the stress test. But I think it's a good theory. As I mentioned earlier, in the United States, the National Association of Realtors and independent market research firms do study the underlying motivations in the market and what might be causing the statistical trends that we see. So I'm linking below to an article that references one study, a recent study in the United States that talks about declining inventory and what's causing it. And they give a few reasons. They say interest rates directly cause supply to be decreasing. They don't just cause demand to be increasing. We know that low interest rates are pushing prices up directly because people can afford more with a lower interest rate, but also they're increasing demand. People with low interest rates, more people get into the market and can see that they can buy. But the study claims that low interest rates directly cause supply to decrease. I actually will have to go back and read that again to understand why they say that. I can't remember how much detail they go into in the article, but have a look. Second one, they say that more people are holding on to properties as investments after they move. So we talked about that one. That is borne out in this study in the United States. Third, they say that boomers, they say boomers. I was talking about empty nesters and downsizers, which I think some of those people are in the generation older than boomers, which also has a label. Not into labels, but they do have a label. Can't remember what it is. They do quote that people are hanging onto their homes longer, something that we talked about observing in Canada. In the US, they have programs to keep people in their homes when they would otherwise default. For a while, there are programs to help them get through tough times and stay in their homes. I guess in Canada with the pandemic measures, we've had that. There's been mortgage payment postponement offered by banks. But we don't, as far as I know, we don't have programs that in situations where you get into trouble and you're having a hard time staying in your home, we don't have government programs that help keep you in your home rather than defaulting for a period of time. So they have that in the United States. And that means that even when they went through some downturns, not everybody had to bail on their house. And so that prevented a certain number of properties coming on the market because there's always a small percentage of homes on the market that are power of sale or in the United States, typically foreclosure. And finally, they talk about, or one of the reasons, and this is something that perhaps I already should have mentioned on the Canadian side, is underbuilding. Simply not enough new housing stock being built. When you drive around the outskirts of Ottawa and you see each of the three major subdivisions sprawling and growing like crazy, it's hard to believe that there is not enough housing stock being built because it certainly looks like construction is just happening like crazy everywhere. I wanted to get a handle on whether that would be the case here or not. Are we in fact underbuilding? From the standpoint of looking at market conditions right now, where there's not enough supply, too much demand, we only need to look at the difference in the number of homes being built 10 years ago to now. I don't think, if there's been underbuilding in Ottawa for 50 years, if it's an ongoing problem, that would not explain why we've got suddenly so little supply, because it's always been a problem. So we have to distinguish perennial, ongoing underbuilding with potentially extreme underbuilding, let's say in the last 5 or 7 years, that might have contributed to not enough supply right now. And I didn't want to just talk off the top of my head about this one, so I pulled some statistics. Here's our two graphs The first one shows you the number of completions, and this includes condos and freehold properties of all types, new construction completed units, quarter by quarter from 2015 through 2020. And you can see it's pretty level. Now you'll look at that one bar at the beginning of 2015 and you will think, you might think, aha, before that, they were much higher. Look, that one bar is really high and then it went down. Were we building a lot more before that? Well, I pulled the 2010 to 2014 numbers and they are similar to the 2015 to 2020 numbers. In fact, the actual absolute value is lower. So we are building more now than we were then, but the trend is flat. I mean, the number of units being built has been pretty consistent for 10 years. And the level might have been a bit lower in the first 5 years than it is in the next 5 years, but it's pretty level. It's not like all of a sudden we're not building enough. Maybe we haven't been building enough all along, but to me, this is not the number one reason that right now, or in the last few years, the last 5 years, inventory has dropped a lot. Yes, building more would help solve the problem. And if the government, if we want to have any government intervention to potentially help the housing market, arguably it should be any measures that would enable more building without destroying the landscape. That's it for today, folks. Those are the reasons that I can come up with and the reasons that have been studied in the United States that I think jive with the reasons that I see evidence of in Canada for why not enough people are selling to meet the current demand. We do see that small hope in the number of new listings coming on the market so far in 2021 being greater than 2020. Maybe we're headed in the right direction. Markets always cycle. It will eventually turn down. That could be the first early sign. So if you're a person looking to buy, cross your fingers and hang on for that hope. If you're a person looking to sell, well, right now it's the craziest seller's market we've ever had. So it's a great time to sell. And even if inventory does start to climb for a little while, it's going to be quite a while before it would be a bad market, bad time to sell. So that's it. I will see you in the next video.